I'm JB. This is the Back It Up Binge podcast, and I'm talking with former Baltimore Oriole and Pittsburgh Pirate Jeff Ballard. Jeff, welcome to the Binge.
Thanks, Jeff. Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Appreciate you joining. I wanted to start out with something. I've never really talked to anybody that had this situation like you. You grew up in Montana. You had no professional teams out there. So who was your favorite team, say in baseball, football, your favorite athlete growing up?
Oh man, it was different times, and at least for me, when I was a kid, there wasn't much TV, right? I mean, you had Saturday games, maybe you didn't have them on all the time like you do now.
Right.
So watching sports on TV was not a big thing for me because I always wanted to be outside playing. So I might watch for a minute, but like I got to go throw a baseball or I got to go shoot a basketball, stuff like that, because I couldn't stand to sit still. And so being outside playing was really what I did. But I would tell you, as far as my favorite major league team, then this will make you curdle a little bit, but
Don't say it.
I grew up when one of the early books I read was about Lou Gehrig, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And the Iron Streak, and what a great guy. But it was a book that was certainly pro Lou. And so I thought it was really cool, and so through that book, you got to read about the historic Yankees, that made the Yankees what they are. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, all those kind of guys. And so back in the day, so I kind of was like a big Yankee fan. And not that I ever watched them, not that I looked in the paper and said, well, how are they doing? It was just because of Lou Gehrig, really. I played first base as well as pitched. And so it was I was left-handed. So I had these things that I, associated with him. And it was kind of that. And to tell you the truth, it's interesting. When you're raised a certain way, or you have something from your childhood that was important to you, it's also very challenging as you get older to get out of that habit, right? For an example, my whole family went to Oklahoma, and my dad played football at Oklahoma and then played baseball at Oklahoma after he got hurt, and played. And so we followed the Sooners all the time when I was growing up throughout the 70s and my impressionable years. Well, I go to school at Stanford. Well, I love Stanford. I love Stanford football. John Elway, great. But if Stanford played Oklahoma, I can't get myself to root for Stanford. I was raised, it's the same way with like my dad, because he was from Southern Arkansas. He was a Cowboy fan in football.
Okay.
Right. And so I grew up a Cowboy fan. Well, I grew up with like Roger Staubach and Tom Landry and all the ones that made the Cowboys who they are, right? The game. I don't like the Cowboys now, and I don't like Jerry Jones at all, but I still can't help myself but root for him, right?
There you go.
It's one of these weird things. You get these associations that's hard to get rid of. I know I shouldn't like the Yankees. I'm an Oriole. I love being an Oriole. Man, I love it.
But I got to tell you, you just set me up for
follow the Yankees.
You just set me up for all my buddies now to bust me about this, but we'll give it a pass because you are an Oriole in my book. I know you play for the Pirates, but we'll get into that. You're an Oriole, right?
I love it.
So you go to Billings West High School and you played basketball because they didn't have a baseball team. So talk about your journey from, through high school with no baseball team, and you wind up having the opportunity to either go to Stanford or get drafted. How does that happen without a high school baseball team?
Well, Legion baseball in Montana is very big, and it still is. We did just start high school baseball. Like my son's actually playing for the West High school team. That's their first year was last year. So this is their second year now in existence. So pretty cool. They have high school baseball now. Legion is still probably the best competitive level in the state because they're like all-star teams of cities' high school teams in a way. So Legion back when I played was huge. And so we started playing practicing about the time high school does now, late March, early April. And we'd practice for a couple months and get all our fundamentals down. And then we'd play 60 games in the summer.
Wow.
Really from Memorial Day to about 1st of August. So it was busy. We played a lot. So it's one of the Dean Stotts, who was the assistant coach at Stanford when I was there, and known for his recruiting talents. He really made a name for himself over his time at Stanford for being a top-notch recruiter. And mind you, recruiting now is completely different than it was back in the late 70s and 80s.
Okay.
Back then, the coaches would go see you. They would fly to your town. They would do this. More effort on their part. Now they wait for you to come to them more than them going to see you, really. But when I was 15, I would have been a 15 league age for Legion. I was a sophomore, I guess, in high school. We went to Lewiston. We won the state championship that year, and we went to Lewiston, Idaho for a regional. And I pitched the first game I pitched as a 15-year-old there against Yakima, Washington, who was really, really good. They had a lot of D1 future MLB guys, I think. I know, well, like Mel Stoudemire Jr. was on that team, and so the Stoudemires were big in Yakima, Washington. So that was they were just really good. I pitched a great game. I lost the game, but I pitched well. And there was a scout there, just a bird dog scout, watching the deal and took note of the fact that I was well, Dean Stotts, later that fall, he was looking for some kid in the Northwest he'd heard about. He didn't know who he was, so he called this guy in Portland and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this kid and anything about him?" He goes, "No, I've never heard of that kid, but why don't you call this guy over in Lewiston? He knows a lot of people in the Northwest, and maybe he'll know something about that kid." So he calls this guy in Lewiston, Idaho, and the guy says, "Well, I don't know anything about the kid you're looking for, but I will tell you, I watched this 15-year-old out of Billings pitch. You might want to take a look into him." So, So Dean, then what they do at the high academic schools, before they even do anything, they got to get transcripts to see if there's any chance you could even get into Stanford. So he sent, knowing nothing about Billings, there was 2 public schools and 1 private Catholic school here in town. So he looked that up, and he just sent a letter to each of the schools, not knowing anything about me other than my name, and asked for if they had transcripts, would they send it? So Billings West, which is where I went to school, sent transcripts back, and he kind of put it in his future recruiting file. And so when I became a senior, heading into my senior year, he made a trip to Billings, and there wasn't like there was any, like, "Hey, Dean Stotts of Stanford, we're really interested. I heard about you. I'm going to come watch." I did know he was there coming to watch, but it wasn't like we had any dialogue during the summer, right? At all. It was just, he showed up, and what he found out through his research was that Dave McNally lived in Billings, and his son was also on the team. So now he had someone to talk to about me. And at the same time, he was interested in Jeff. His name's Jeff as well.
Wow.
McNally. And so he was interested in taking a look at him. And he came and watched a state tournament game where we played Great Falls, and we beat them 29-1. So it's not like this was any great game for him to watch. I pitched 5 innings and pitched well. And, Jeff probably played well. And so I got to meet Dean like the next day over at Dave McNally's house, and and get to hear about Stanford. So one of the conversations and Dean's a good friend of mine now. I talked to him, and we used to golf a bunch together. But one of the parts of the story that I didn't know until just recently was that when he was here, he was talking to Dave, and I'm not a hard thrower, as anybody knows. So like I'm not there lighting up the radar gun for Coach Stotts, but I have a really good breaking ball. I have really good command. And so he's talking to Dave, and he's like, "Well, he doesn't throw real hard." And Dave said, "No, but I can tell you one thing, that guy's a dude." And so when Dean Stotts is like, "Dave McNally thinks this kid's a dude, who am I to say he's not a dude?" So he ends up being interested, and Jeff and I went on a recruiting trip to Stanford that fall. They ended up offering us a scholarship. We had to wait to see if we get in. We got in, sometime in April of our senior year. Now it's really late, for how things work now, but back then it was like April of our senior year, because we were practicing for Legion. And Got a letter in the box that I'd been accepted. It was like, oh, great, we're off and running, going to Stanford. And it was
But
that simple.
but you got drafted out of high school. You still went to college. What was the why did you decide to go to Stanford and not to the Brewers who
Well,
drafted you?
pretty easy, really. For one, it was like a 34th round pick by the Brewers, I think, something like that. And two, that was the year they had a strike
Oh, okay.
that summer. So they had the draft, but there was a strike. It was in 1981, I guess. And they had the strike, and no one even contacted me from the Brewers because they were all in disarray. Yeah,
Really?
it's like I got a letter that said, "Hey, you like a telegram, telegram back." I mean, that's how you got a telegram. Dating myself hugely here, but so they sent a telegram announcing that I'd been drafted by the Brewers in the 34th round or whatever, but no one ever called and said, "Hey, we'll give you $1 if you'd like to play pro ball as a opposed." I mean, it really wasn't a choice.
Okay.
And I would have never given up. It would have had to be, and back then, I don't even know, a first round pick maybe, but I wasn't first round pick guy. But I don't even know if I'd have signed being a first round pick. I mean, throwing away a Stanford degree on at the time, like, yeah, it's great, but kind of a pipe dream, to be actually in the MLB. Yeah, something I always wanted to play pro ball, sure. But
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a smart choice because what I read about you at Stanford was a very successful collegiate career. You left there with a lot of Stanford records. I don't know if they still stand. Some of them do.
career wins does, and I think
Wins, that's right. Wins 37, innings pitched 428,
I think
strikeouts
those stand.
316.
Yeah, I think those two stand.
And you were all Pac-10 twice in
Mhm.
83 and 85.
Mhm.
In 85, you guys finished fifth in the nation. You have a teammate there, Jack McDowell, who goes on,
Yeah.
has a successful Major League
Yep.
Baseball career. Obviously, you made the right choice, but what was it like in Stanford as a pitcher and that college? I mean, you're D1, you're elite there.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. Thinking back, one of the things that happened that was really important for my Stanford career is Stanford doesn't start till the end of September. So when I finished Legion Ball my senior year after regionals, Jeff and I had 6 weeks probably before we went to Stanford. Well, I had worked with Dave McNally a few times, but not regularly over my Legion career. I mean, he'd come out every now and then, but during this 6 week period, I got to throw bullpens a couple times a week with Dave, just in his full attention, working on pitches. And one of the things that I added during that 6 weeks was a slider. And I had a really good curveball. My fastball, all I threw was two seamers. I didn't know any better. Had a really good run, and we added a slider. And so when I showed up my freshman year at Stanford, you competed all fall, and we played games. We played JUCOs in the area, small other colleges in the areas. We played games all fall. It's different now. You don't do that, but during that, I pitched great all fall. I came in hitting on all cylinders, and so when the season started, the coaches are like, "You're in the rotation, right?" So I started my freshman year, the first series of the year, we played Cal State Fullerton, who was ranked number 1. That was my first start at Stanford as a freshman, was against
Oh,
them.
true
And I,
freshman.
and I beat them. My first game, I beat the number 1 team in the country, in the rankings. And I'm like, okay, this is great. So I was kind of off and running. That didn't mean I didn't have struggles at times, but I really was off and running at Stanford. So I never thought I wouldn't play. I just assumed I would, and I think it was the attitude of going in and just earning a spot really propelled me for those 4 years. I went from being a starter my freshman year to then, I started off like 4-1 or 5-1, and pitched really well. But then I hit a dry spot. I really couldn't get an out very well, so he pulled me out of the rotation. I ended up being the closer. We went to the College World Series my freshman year. When
Wow.
we went to the College World Series, I was the closer. So I think I made all regionals as a freshman because I pitched really well. I came in and closed the game. And then my rule was by the end of the year on Friday and Saturday, because we play usually conference games Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The rule was I'd be a closer, meaning I'd come in late on Friday or Saturday if needed, But Sunday I'd be first in because I had the ability to throw long innings because I was a starter. So if the starter on Sunday struggled, then I would come in maybe early. And so that's how I made all regional. I think I closed the game and got a save, and then I came in the championship game and pitched the last 6 innings or so and got us to the World Series, I think, if I remember correctly. So that's kind of how in this sophomore year I was just a closer, same rules. And so at one point I had like the most saves because back then you just didn't see a lot of saves, right? So but that record was I think it didn't last long because the pitchers got more specialized. But then by my junior year I was the Friday starter, and then senior year as a Friday starter. Usually Fridays, when they call you the Friday starter, you're the number one and pitched the first game of conference series, right? So had a great year my senior year, pitched extremely well. And Jack was our Sunday starter for the most part. And he was a freshman my senior year. So we had a really good bookends for conference series. Jack was obviously phenomenal. I mean, the guy came in, but what was best about Jack was his mental toughness and just kind of being a dick when he's on the mound. I mean, that's how he pitched, right? He pitched angry, right. And aggressive. And he was a great teammate, totally about wins, never about himself. And he would go do whatever it took to try to help the team win. And that was what he was his whole career.
So following your career, and you just talked about it, you weren't a hard thrower. I mean, you probably topped out 90, 91 at the most.
Oh, no.
You lived
in
the
we're
80s.
on the slow gun. We're on the slow gun. So if you want to equate it to today's guns, I could hit 90.
Okay.
Right? On the gun we used, I would top out about 85 or 6 four-seamers in. And then I lived in that 81 to 83. That's where the sinkers were.
So was that common for a closer in college when you were there at that, or weren't they faster?
Yeah, typically if you saw a closer, they'd throw harder. But the thing is, my breaking ball ruled, right? And so because my breaking ball is so sharp, I didn't have to be a hard thrower because it was a challenge for hitters to hit it. So
right.
And I just think I competed. I competed. I located fastballs well, so I was able to miss barrels, and that was kind of even where I was closing or as a starter, right? But in college, I struck out a lot of guys, as you saw, I had the career strikeout leader record for a while. That's because the breaking ball. As I got to the big leagues, I didn't strike out anybody, because the breaking ball. My breaking ball was good, and I could get outs with it, but I couldn't get guys to swing and miss, especially righties, often enough to get 7 or 8 strikeouts in a game, right? I'd get 1, 3, that kind of deal in a game, typically, and that usually would be lefties. There are a few lefties I struck out a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So following your sophomore season, though, you wind up playing for the 84 United States team, and you have McGwire, Surhoff on that team, and you had some good success. You actually shook the hands of Fidel Castro. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, that started in the summer of '83. I played on the Pan American USA team for the Pan American Games. So that summer, we had a lot of great players that played, and McGwire was on that team. And we went to – that was the team I was on with McGwire.
Okay.
It was in the '83. And we traveled all over the world. We're in Japan, we're in Belgium, we're in Aruba, and then we finished in Caracas, Venezuela. That summer for the Pan American Games, and it was great. A lot of really good players on that team, but I wasn't so dominant my junior year. I had a good year pitching, but I wasn't like I was my senior year. I might have made the Olympic team coming off of pitching that summer in '83 on the USA team, but in '84 that was the first year of baseball on the Olympic team. They had all the main guys, right, that played on that team. And then they needed to put together another USA team in the fall to go to the Intercontinental Cup, they called it, which was in Cuba. Right. And so I ended up being selected. Coach Marcus, my head coach, was one of the coaches on that team, which I'm sure helped. And so I was on that fall USA team that went to Cuba. That team Barry Bonds was on. So, in the conference, when I played in the PAC, we had Bonds and Mike Devereaux, and we had Randy Johnson, and we had McGwire, and a whole slew of other guys that were really good big leaguers that played whether it be at UCLA, USC, or either Arizona school. And even Cal had some big league guys. Kevin Moss comes to mind. He played for the Yankees.
Yep.
So we had a lot of really good talent in the league, but that was the fall that I played with Barry and got to see, watch him play on a daily basis. So it was really cool. We won the bronze in Cuba on that deal. And when you won a medal, you got to go through. Fidel Castro showed up at the stadium, and you got to go through and shake his hand. And one of the many dignitaries over my career that I got to shake a hand of, and he was very intimidating, as you'd imagine. Not particularly like friendly. He just was there, kind of gave you the scowl and shook your hand, and then someone put a medal on you, and then you just kind of go through. So I'm like, yeah, that's not a guy you want to cross with, I don't think. But quite the experience nonetheless that baseball provided. So it was a really cool fall for sure.
So you wind up getting drafted by the Orioles in the 7th round. You spend a couple of seasons in the minors, but you get called up in '87. In May of '87, you have your first start. Talk about that experience, getting sat down to say you're going to the majors and then going through that first start.
I actually got drafted by the Baltimore after my junior year too, and then after my senior year of college. So there was not much of a reason to sign after my junior year. It was a low round draft pick still. I can't even remember what round it was, but the amount of money they could offer, it wasn't worth giving up, trying to finish my degree at Stanford. So I went back. I drafted, obviously the Orioles liked me. And so they drafted me again, much higher round, their 4th pick, I think, in the '85 draft. And so, I flew through the minors. I pitched really well in Newark, New York, really dominant that summer, as you'd expect in rookie ball. The next year in '86, I went A, AA, AAA all in 1 year, and pitched well at each level. And then in '87, I started off like 5-0 with a 1.18 in Rochester. And the Orioles were struggling, and Cal Sr. was the manager. So they called me up in early May. And you kind of felt it was coming, right? The Orioles aren't doing well, and I'm dominating in Rochester. So you're thinking, hey, I got to be getting in the conversation.
Right.
So, I got called up, and I met the team in Chicago. We're playing the White Sox. Typically, when they call you up, you get to watch that game, and the next day you're starting. They don't give you like 4 or 5 days to kind of ease in. It's like throw you into the fire. So I remember my parents and my brother came out to Chicago to watch the opening day start. And the thing I remember the most, it wasn't a great start. I didn't pitch well at all. Was that I was warming up in the bullpen and I had so much adrenaline. The ball was just going all over the place. When I'm throwing sinkers, it's cutting and sailing on me. And I didn't have very good. I mean, Terry Kennedy was catching, and he made the comment, like, wow, this ball's moving all over the place. Like, that was a good thing. It's not when you don't know where it's going. So, I think we scored a ton of runs that game, so I got a no decision, but I didn't pitch well at all. I gave up a bunch of runs early, and I didn't really pitch well the first month. I'm not even sure I really had a good game that I remember. And I know that I mainly was pitching scared, unlike when I was dominating at AAA, I never had any worry. I just threw pitches, hit the location, knew what to do to get hitters out, was successful. And that recipe shouldn't change just because you're in the big leagues, but mentally is what the mental side is what changes. And I remember
you had a 6.59 ERA. You started 14 games that year, pitched almost 70 innings.
It was not good. And they gave me plenty of chances to figure it out. But and I probably got a couple of those starts in September, maybe. I can't remember exactly when the starts were, but what I remember was pitching against Oakland in June somewhere, and I only gave up 2 runs, which is phenomenal because I walked 9 and I was in the 5th inning, right? And I'd only given up 2 runs, and Cal Sr., he comes out to the mound. He goes, I've seen enough. Like, he couldn't take walking guys anymore, right? Which I totally understand. Like, I was having a hard time taking it myself, But he goes, I've seen enough. And he takes the ball from me, and I walk over to that. And I knew that was my last start for that call-up at that time. So
Were you on the cusp or pre 100 pitch count outings? I mean, it wasn't around at that point. He
No,
took you out in that specific game because you were walking, not because you were reaching
no,
100,
no.
right?
You never got pulled out for pitch counts. There was
Okay.
no pitch counts. I
Yeah.
mean, they realized sometimes if you're in the eighth or ninth inning and the game's close, they were at that time they were using closers, but it's not even that often that you would get pulled because you threw well after six, so they could get to the middle guy in the closer. Like you pitched,
Okay.
I threw over 100 pitches all the time.
Right. Okay.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that first season, you have Boddicker, you have Flanagan, and you have McGregor on the
Mm.
staff that you joined. How were they in your development? Did anybody take you under their wings?
Um, the thing that you learned from those guys, it's not like they just take you under your wing and try to like be a dad and teach you. But what you are around is them talking about hitters, talking about how to pitch, because each of those guys were similar in the sense Flanagan might have been the hardest thrower of the three, Boddicker second. Certainly McGregor was a lot like me. So watching McGregor pitch was very valuable for me in watching how he would just turn it over, a little sinker, take a little off his fastball, sometimes throw a change, then loop in a breaking ball. And he was always keeping hitters off balance. So if there's a guy I really identified with as much as anything was McGregor. And, the other thing that I remember Boddicker talking about a lot was, he called it his BP fastball. It was like, yeah, I'm going to show you my normal fastball is at whatever his velocity was. But if he's 2-0 and he doesn't want to just throw changeup, he just take a little off his fastball because he could command that really big and just throw it down and away and let the guy beat it into the ground. Because he'd be a little out front, hit a ground ball to Cal, you're out. That's how Boddicker viewed the world when he was pitching. Seems simple, not as simple as you can talk about it, but it was a great strategy. So learning those kind of things from those guys was invaluable for me as I, kind of got going in my career. And so, yeah, it was fun. It was fun to be around him for sure.
So the first 2 years you're in the majors, Orioles aren't that good, 67 wins, 54 wins. And all of a sudden it all comes together for you and the team in 89. 87 wins, finished second, all the way through to that last weekend against the Blue Jays. We had a chance for the playoffs. Your year, 18-8, 3.43 ERA, sixth in the Cy Young voting. Why did it all come together for you that year and also coincide with that team?
Well, a couple of things, and I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to 88 a little bit to discuss because it was important in 89 happening for me. So, in 88, when I got called up in May, I pitched okay early, went like 4-4 and was feeling all right. I'm a lot better than I was the year before. So I'm feeling like it, but July hit and I just was bad. I couldn't get an out, couldn't miss a barrel. I was getting hammered every game. And the pressure started building, kind of like my first call up to where people are like, when are you going to send him down? When are you going to send him down? And one thing about Frank Robinson is he didn't talk to anybody, including his players. And so you just were an island, sitting there. I had no idea what was happening from the front office standpoint of what they were thinking. And so every day I was going to the park going, well, they're going to send me down. And then they wouldn't. And then I'd get another start and I'd pitch bad. And then, well, now they're going to send me down. And so I had this just weight of the world on my shoulders and was just not fun at all. And I'm going, well, I don't know what's going on here. Well, there was an article in early August in the Baltimore Sun where the reporters were talking to Frank and he's kind of going over the team and they're asking him questions. And one of the questions was, well, when are you going to send Jeff Ballard down? Flat out question in the paper. Right. So I'm reading the article and Frank says, we're not sending him down. He's got nothing to prove at AAA anymore. He's already done that. He's either going to learn to pitch here or he's done. So he's going to get the full time. Well, all of a sudden, when I realized I wasn't going anywhere, was a huge relief to me.
Yeah, I bet.
I went out the next two games through complete game shutouts, and all of a sudden pitched great the rest of the year. And so when I got to spring training in 89, right away, Frank said, you're on the team, get yourself ready. So I'm like, talk about a shift in attitude, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So now I can relax and actually feel like I'm here. I'm going to stay, and then work into figuring out how to pitch at the big leagues. And to tell you the truth, I fell into it that year in a weird way. I was the fifth starter coming out of spring training. And the way the off days work, I didn't get to pitch in a game. I had like, I don't know, like 15 bullpens or something. I mean, I threw a lot from spring training through the first, just trying to stay sharp, waiting for my first start. And when I got my first start was in Minnesota, and I was on the day of all the number one starters. I was like, that's a bad draw. So now, the fifth starter going against everybody else's number one. So like Frank Viola was the first guy I pitched against in Minnesota, and I win. And I pitched great. I pitched into the ninth, gave up 2 runs and won. And what happened in that game was I fell into a groove to where I was just locating my sinker, mixing my breakable in, had a good changeup to the righties, and realized, man, if I can hit those spots, they're gonna hit it to Cal or Billy, and if I can keep it in the park, I got a great shot. And one of the other big changes was that helped me be successful in '89. In '88, we had the slowest outfield on the planet playing, and they were not very good defensively. And roll forward to '89, the Orioles had a step change in personnel. We had Mike Devereaux, we had Steve Finley, we had Brady Anderson,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
right? All rookies. And then Joe Orsulak, who was a really good outfielder. Joe wasn't a rookie, but he was a good player. So those were our 4 outfielders that rotated through. And so now the thing was, all I got to do, like, just keep it in the yard, it'll get caught. Just keep it in the yard. So when you start making quality pitches and guys are running balls down in the gap, and when you get grounders, you got great defense in the infield. Craig Worthington was at third base. He was really good defensively. And you had Cal and Billy up the middle. I mean, it was awesome. Completely different than it was in '88. And the same in '87. The Orioles were bad, but they were bad defensively. So all of a sudden you get on a team that has a lot of energy with youth. They can run, and you got great defense. Pitching became a lot easier. So when you fall into the groove, like I did, all of a sudden I went 5-0, and I pitched, beat everybody's number one, and I had all of this positive attitude and momentum just carrying me through the deal. And, I held on to that until Incaviglia hit a line drive off my neck in the end of May.
Okay.
And kind of gave me pause, right? It kind of knocked me out of my rhythm. And I pitched, I was 8-1 when that happened. I was going for my 9th win. I got a no decision in that game, but the next game I got to 9-1, but I didn't pitch very well. We scored like 17 runs against the Yankees. I gave up, 4 or 5, 6 runs or whatever, and pitched 5 or 6 innings in that game and got the win, but it wasn't a good start. And then I was 9-1, and then fell into a little slump, or maybe I was 9-1 and that was my 10th win. That's what it was. I was going for my 10th win when Incaviglia, and then I got 10 the next week, but then I lost like 3 in a row in June, kind of heading into the All-Star break. But when I got back from the All-Star break, I started pitching well again. And then Frank made a really good decision for us as we're trying to get to the pennant, racing for the division title, because Toronto was really good as well, and we were just neck and neck with them, that we had basically 3 guys that were pitching well as starters, and it was Bob Malacky and myself and Pete Harnish, and then Dave Johnson every now and then was pitching, but really the 3 of us. And so Frank decided to go to a 3-man rotation in August. You never see that now.
No.
But with the off days, the way the schedule worked, the reason he did it wasn't that if we played 5 in a row, he wouldn't pitch us. Like, he wouldn't pitch. It was like every 4th game you're pitching, not every 3, because of the off days. But if you did play 5 in a row, that's where he'd mix in like Harnish or Dave Johnson for that 4th starter. But we definitely never went more than 4 starters. So I was pitching every 4th game. But for me, not being a hard thrower, it fit right into my deal. When you're on and you feel it, it's great. When you're not a hard thrower and you don't need maximum strength, you just need your feel. Then I pitched some of the best I pitched all year was late August through September. I pitched some great games.
I interviewed another pitcher, Bob Tewksbury. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He was like you, not a hard thrower, 83 to 88 in his career.
Yeah.
And it always, I always think about pitchers when you step on that mound, and look, it's still 80 miles an hour, right? It's not like it's coming in at 10 miles an hour with a loop pitch, but how much is in your psyche? Just trust your stuff, get on the rubber, just throw it to where the catcher's setting up, hit your spots like you talk about. But it would have been nice to have a 98, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think any pitcher would ever turn down, 95 plus, or even in the 90s, really. If you're not one that throws in the 90s, yeah, it would have been great. But the thing is that for me, in any pitcher that throws slower, your location has to be a lot finer. So your ability to hit the spot at the knees on the outside corner
Right.
is a big deal. Because when you miss it a little up or you miss it a little on the plate, you don't have velocity to help you out. But the other thing you do a lot, which you'll see hard throwers, everything they throw typically is hard. Now, a lot of guys now, they have good changeups, and so they use it effectively. But still, what you see in a lot of these guys that throw, it's hard. Hard sliders, hard sweepers, everything's hard. It's coming at you. So the hitters, a lot of times, now they just got to gear it up, and they get fooled by the movement of the pitch more than the speed of the pitch.
Okay.
I would say more often that's I don't mean to say that the speed of the pitch doesn't change in today's game at all. It does. There's a lot of guys that still use it, but when I played, you saw a lot more pitchers, as they call it, Greg Maddoxes of the world, that were out there just constantly changing speeds. So you were never throwing the same speed, 2 or 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And that's the difference with velocity. When you got velocity, you're going to challenge hitters when you need to. And when you're a pitcher, you're challenging them in a different way. You're challenging them to hit your pitch, not just because I can throw it down the middle hard, right? And you'll be late on it. So it's a different mentality totally when you're pitching. The thing is that both are effective. And unfortunately for me in today's game, you don't see enough of the pitcher because they never draft it anymore. They're all looking velocity, right? Got to have velocity. And so the guys that can really pitch rarely get the opportunity to get there on their success because everybody's so geared velocity. It would seem to me what you see where the guys that pitch are the guys that used to throw super hard, maybe had an arm injury, but now they've backed down to where they're only 90 and they're veterans, right? Now they pitch,
Right.
And so you'll see that in some of the older guys that are still, and once you've got street credit because you've been in the game, then everybody goes, well, he knows how to pitch. He knows how to pitch at the big league level. I want him, even though I could go get a young guy throwing 98. He's only 90 now. But yeah, that guy I know is going to win because he knows how to do it.
Yeah,
so
understood. Yeah.
It's just hard to get to that know how to do it phase when you start off with that, right? So
talking about your arsenal of pitches, I want to talk to you about one pitching career highlight and another one as a fielder. But first off, August 25th, 1989. You're facing the Yankees. You're the first person to ever strike out Don Mattingly 3 times in a game. What were you doing that night, if you recollect that night, that made you so effective against? I mean, he was such a great hitter.
Yeah, Don was great, and we all knew it. But my advantage was he's left-handed too.
Okay.
And so I typically had more of my success against lefties than good righty hitters. My guys I got out were like the more consistently were the big swinging righties because I could change speeds on them because they're looking to elevate and lift, right? And lefties. And so because of my breaking ball. And so with Don that night, I think he mostly was having a night where he was a little jumpy for whatever reason. So he and I caught him on a good night. I don't think I would have been able to do that very often, if ever again. But I hung pitches high and in more than once that night that he would hit a mile foul, right? And so I got him pulling, whether it be a fastball or hanging breaking. I mean, I got him pulling. And so where I struck him out on 3 different pitches, one was a slider down and away, normal arm slot. I dropped down with a fastball, I think, down and away that got him. And one was another sidearm curve down and away. So when you throw in those 3 different, the sidearm was a lot slower than the normal slider would be. So it just was one of those kind of the stars lined up for me and not him that night. He was pissed though. I remember the next game when I faced him in Baltimore in September. All the reporters were like, "Yeah, Mattingly's really out to get you. What do you think about that?" And I said, "I don't want to talk about that before the game. I don't want to get that in my head, now that, oh man, Don's mad and he's really gonna." I mean,
Was
he was
he
a
one
good
of
hitter.
was he one of the best hitters you faced, or was there one that stands out to you as like, I could never get that guy?
Well, I mean, Don was a great hitter, and his average probably was fine off me. I think I could look it up. I got actually a stat sheet here, but he he was good. You know who else was really good was Wade Boggs, but I did all right against him. I got Wade Boggs to pop up in the infield one year, and that was the only time he did it. But it's some of the really good hitters that are notoriously good. I had decent success against. I like Barry Bonds when I was with the Pirates. He was with the Giants. Of course, they only faced him 3 times, but I faced him in college and had good success on the college. But he's left-handed. He was 0 for 3 with a punch out. So it's not a great sampling. He's only 0 for 3. That's nothing. But still, he didn't get a hit or a bomb off me. So I'm not in his big league book. So that's a good thing. But I would say different guys that would wait back. There were hard outs. Like I think of Paul Molitor, for example, really, really good hitter. But Paul would use the whole field. And if a guy like me, he would wait and then be able to shoot the ball to right center because my velocity wasn't good enough to keep him jumping, right? He could sit back and still use his hand to drive it well. He was just a great hitter. There was a guy in Seattle that, he was probably a good hitter, but not great by any means. Had a decent career. It was Henry Cotto. There was a point in time where a stretch of several games, and I pitched against Seattle all the time. I could never miss not pitching against them, it seemed like. I could not miss his barrel. Like every time I threw it down the middle. I'd throw a slider, and I'd throw it down the middle. I'd throw a fastball trying to throw it low way. I'd throw it down the middle. And he just killed it. And even the infielders knew Cal and Billy would laugh because they knew I couldn't friggin' miss his barrel, right? Yeah, you run into that.
As a pitcher, I'm probably asking an obviously dumb question here, but as a pitcher, going back to Mattingly, you see him out ahead of your pitches. Are you saying, okay, he's jumpy, he's out ahead, let me throw it down and out?
Well, yes, but when I was trying to do that earlier in the count, and some of those that he's pulling foul, I'm trying to do that, but I'm missing.
Okay.
But I'm missing in a good area where he's just pulling him foul, which I think helped me strike him out in that game because all of a sudden I hit one that actually breaks hard and gets to the spot. It's different than the one I'd been hanging, right? So it's like 2 pitches in one. I just got lucky I didn't hang one right in the middle of the plate where he wouldn't hit it foul, right? I hung it in, so he could, when he got out front on it, he was pulling it foul.
Is it hard for you as a successful major league pitcher to watch a game and not say to yourself, he should be doing this, he should be doing that, throw this, throw that, or you just watch the game now?
There's times where I'm thinking you got him set up for this, and but I don't do that too much. There's times, what does happen is like, why did you throw that pitch more than you got him set up for this? It's like,
okay,
I acknowledge the fact that, but these guys throw it. Everybody that comes in now is not me. I remember I got a scouting report one time. We sat in the office with, can't remember if it was Cal Sr. or Frank or whatever. No, it was Cal Sr. That's right. It's Cal Sr. It was early in my career. And we used to have scouting report before you'd start. You'd sit in the coach's office and go over the scouting report. Well, the scouting report that we had from our advanced scouts around was Roger Clemens threw the night before against this team. Now I'm pitching. Well, they're like, yeah, you want to throw the fastball in? You want to throw the fastball in? And I'm like, that's Roger Clemens throwing. Like, what? That doesn't mean no good, right? So a lot of times the scouting reports for me, I just ignore it because I'm really not getting anything out of it. You got to figure it out yourself.
Gotcha. Okay. One other career highlight, August 8th, 1990, you started triple play, a 163 Ballard to Ripken to Horn. Talk about that play. Do you still remember it vividly? It's a triple play.
I remember it vividly because, for one, I was out of the rotation. I was in the pen that year. I started off bad, and then they demoted me to be in the bullpen. And I came into the game in Oakland, and who was the hitter? Willie Randolph, I think. Well, it was a really good call by LaRussa because for the most part, I'm going to get a strike. And I'm probably going to throw first pitch fastball. They have runners at first and second. And he called a hit and run. Well, I threw it. He swung. He hit a line drive that caught my glove. My glove was he hit it so hard. My glove was hanging down to my right as I finished the pitch that I didn't even really move. It just hit my glove. And I caught it while the runners are running. So I just turn and throw it to Cal, and Cal throws it to first and triple play on one pitch. So I threw one pitch, got 3 outs. When it came out, came back in, faced a lefty, and I think I threw 3 pitches the next inning, got an out, or 2 pitches, where it was. I know when I got done, I got more outs than pitches I threw in that game.
Wow. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No.
Pretty amazing.
I threw 3 pitches and got 4 outs.
That's awesome. So you mentioned Cal Sr., you mentioned Frank Robinson, and you played for Jim Leyland when you eventually went over to Pittsburgh. What were they like to play for? Similarities, differences, and who was your favorite to play for, if there was one?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Easy for me in the sense of my personality. Cal Sr. was tough. As a rookie, he was really tough. And for one, Cal's super old school. And until you earn your stripes, he doesn't have a lot of time for you. So if you're a rookie and you're struggling, there's, it's not that he won't talk to you. It's just that he's like, you're not getting the job done. Right. Just very, very curt, very straightforward kind of guy. Not a lot of compassion. Frank was not a good manager. And I don't think there's anybody that ever played for Frank that would say differently. He was not a good manager in the sense that he may know X's and O's, but he was not a good communicator at all with his players. And it was frustrating, not just for pitchers, but for like hitters on the bench. Like when it was time for people to pinch hit, he didn't even say, hey, Orsolak, you're hitting for so-and-so. He would just point to the end of the bench, and then give the sign to go hit. And the hitters would be looking down, is he pointing at me or you? Right. And then he'd almost get mad, like you didn't understand who he was pointing at.
Right.
Finally, the guy would get up that he was pointing at and go hit. That's the kind of communication. There just wasn't any. Right. And it was frustrating. Like you watch him at the end of the dugout, you're not sure if he's even paying attention to the game or what was going on. Right. And Frank would be fine to talk to you. I mean, he could be funny and whatever, but from a managing standpoint where you're trying to incent your guys to perform, Frank's like they always talked, it was one of the things they always said about Frank was, well, the game came pretty easy to Frank. He couldn't understand why nobody else could do it. Right. He just expected you to go be good. Right. And when you're not, like, what's wrong with you kind of deal. And just he'd never communicate much. I think Cal had his expectation that you learn the Oriole way coming through the minors. When you get to the big leagues, you play the right way.
Better be ready.
That was his expectation. And there wasn't a lot of like nurturing along rookies when they came up. It's like, you're in the big leagues, you handle it. Right. Leyland, on the other hand, was like over communicative. He was great, but you always knew where you stood. I love playing for Leyland in the sense that he could come around and go, hey, how's your day? What did you do today? And treat you like a person. But if he wasn't happy with what you're doing, it's like, hey, listen, you got to get in the – he'd come out and just tell you during BP, he'd walk around and talk to the pitchers. He'd be like, you're not getting ahead in the count. You got to get ahead in the count. First pitch strikes. He would just be very direct and tell you what his expectations were, something like that. Or you got to find a way to get better because you're not getting it done. At the same time going in, so what did you do today? He just mixed it into the conversation. Like, oh, yeah, what did you do this morning? Where'd you go eat? And so he treated you like a person a lot. And you don't, my experience with managers, and it's all different. You got to learn to adjust to everybody, right? There's no right or wrong way. But for me and my personality, I preferred Leyland.
Gotcha.
I didn't like when I was in the bullpen with Pittsburgh, especially in 94, I didn't like how he over abused me and warming me up, because he really did. And it was very, very impactful for why, as I got sent down at the middle of the year, my decline was not from the fact that I couldn't do it, is the fact that you tired me out by getting me up all the time. Gotcha. But, hey, that was his choice. That was his way to play the game. But for me, as far as being around him, I loved it. I loved it. Didn't like being around Frank. But, you know, I would say what I would say about Cal Sr., though, I think it's important, is that as a manager, I had limited experience with him. I had 2 months. By the time I got called up in 88, Frank had already taken over and Cal had been fired. And then when he came back in 89 to be the third base coach and be on the coaching staff, I was pitching well. And you could tell that as I earned my stripes, now Cal was great, right? And then he was very communicative, and then you could talk baseball with him. And then, you know, it was a lot different relationship with me. And I loved him in the end. It was great. It was just my experience early. And a lot of it probably had to do with my failure, right? I wasn't helping him any, you know, I mean, managers, they need you to win, man. That's a flat out deal. Their job's on the line too, right? So I get it. But as a rookie, you know, and young, you don't have it in that perspective. Certainly as an old guy now, I totally get it. But in the end, I really loved playing for Cal. He was a really most knowledgeable baseball man for sure was him. The X's and O's for him and the fundamentals that he was adamant about. And you can see how Cal and Billy played. Tremendous teacher of the game was Cal Sr. Probably the best I was ever around, I would say.
One of the interesting things I found out about your career is you were a pretty good hitter. You had a 385 average. Again, small sample size. You were only in the National League a couple of years. OPS of 818, throw a double in there. But what was interesting about that is Leyland actually had you getting ready to pinch hit 2 times. Now, it didn't happen, but what made you such a good hitter?
Well, I could hit, right? I mean, it's just I always hit. Growing up, I played first. I was always a good hitter. When I got to Stanford my freshman year, they brought me in as a pitcher, right? I kept telling the coach, I want to hit, I want to hit, I want to hit. He never really let me hit. And then I went home and played Legion ball after my freshman year at Stanford and, you know, went back to hitting. And when Coach Marcos would call me, he'd want to see how you pitching, how you feeling. I'd never even talk about pitching because I was pitching great, right? I was just like, yeah, let me tell you how I'm hitting. I'm killing it. You know, I'm hitting 7. I'm, you know, all this stuff. And so when I got back to Stanford, he let me have an opportunity to kind of be a backup first baseman and hit. And so that way I didn't have to shag buckets anymore. I played like all the scrimmages in the games. I'd get some ABs, sometimes DH'd. Every now and then I'd get to play first, you know, in just non-conference games. And it was so fun. And as I went from sophomore to junior to senior year, I started commanding a few more at bats every year. And, you know, I had a couple big home runs. I had a big home run against Cal. I had one game at UC Davis where I went 5 for 5 with a couple home runs. So, I mean, I had a few things in there. And so I always loved hitting. And any time I was around it in pro ball in the minor leagues or even in the big leagues and people are talking hitting, I used to love to get in and talk hitting because it was so fun to hit. When I was in Louisville in 92, after my time with the Orioles was done, there was another pitcher there named Milchin who was a hit in college. He and I used to go out with the pitching machine. We'd get to the park early when the field's in. We'd take the pitching machine out and feed each other and just hit just because it was fun.
Right.
And he was a really good hitter as well. And so I stayed with it enough that when I got to the Pirates and I got some spot starts in 93, I kind of knew what I was doing. And what surprised me is that the speed of the game from watching it all those years wasn't beyond me. Like my first hits was off a guy in Montreal who was throwing 95 miles an hour. And I turned him around on a line drive to right for my first hit. And I got another one that game. And so it was like I just kind of fit in. So I ended up getting 5 hits in 93, and Leyland recognized that I was a good hitting pitcher. So in 94, early in the year, we were carrying extra pitchers because our staff was not very good. So we needed a lot of pitching. And so we had one less field player than normal. And in the National League, when you're doing the double switch and, you're pinch hitting a lot for the pitcher because especially as the game goes on, when you want to switch pitchers, you'll pinch hit for him. He didn't have the flexibility to waste his good pinch hitters early in the game. So he told me to start hitting with the regulars. So I did, which was great. I got regular BP. It's one of the highlights of my big league career because when we're on the road, you're hitting when the fans are coming in. and being able to, and after a little bit of swinging and regular BP, I started getting the timing and being able to elevate. So I started hitting home runs, and you're watching kids in the stands running after. It was a thrill. It was such a thrill. Like, who in the world would not want to take big BP at a big league stadium?
Oh yeah.
Everybody in the world wants to do that, right? And here I was living my dream, finally get to take BP in a big league stadium, and thought it was the greatest thing ever. Well, there was 2 different games that I called it getting double dry humped, and that's what we all laughed, because Leyland would call down, say, Ballard, get loose and then get in here quick because I may pinch hit you. And then I would go into the game and pitch, right? Because I'd pinch hit for the pitcher and then go in and pitch.
Okay.
Well, I down there throwing as fast as I can to get loose, and I come running in because hitting was way more important, right? So I get my helmet on, I get my gloves on, I'm all ready to go. And then either the inning didn't develop the way he needed and wanted to pull the pitcher, or the guy before would make the last out, whatever the case may be. And then I'd have to go back down to the bullpen. So, they always call, when you get up in the bullpen and you don't get in the game, they call it dry hump. You got dry hump. Well, when I go in to pinch hit and I don't get in there either, they were calling, yeah, you got double dry hump. You're right. That's not even right.
That's great.
But the funny thing was, all that BP I took in 94, I never got a spot start. I was always just a reliever. And I never did get an at-bat in a game. All my hits came in 93 before I really got the good BP, right? So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
2 more rounds of questions for you. First, post-MLB career, you were a geophysicist major at Stanford. What made you choose that, and what have you done since your Major League Baseball career?
Honestly say, you could probably check the records, but I doubt there's another MLB pitcher with a geophysics degree.
I've never said that word until I've talked to you. So, I mean,
well, my dad started an oil business in 1963, the year I was born, here in Billings. And geophysics, one of its uses is in the oil business, and it's a trade that you would use in exploration and development of a field. And it's just reading the seismic waves that they send down and bounce off, because you can get a lot of rock information based on the data you get back. So basically, you're interpreting seismic waves, sound waves that go down and bounce off rock layers, and you're interpreting those to try to tell a story of the picture that's under the earth and what you're drilling. And that would be the simplest terms for what a geophysicist would do in the oil business. The other trade is research, like plate tectonics, earthquakes. That's all geophysics. Geophysicists do all that stuff. So when I went to Stanford, my brother, older than me by 7 years, he went to Oklahoma and got a geology and geophysics master's, and geology undergrad and geophysics master's, because he was following my dad's footsteps in the oil business. And his plan was that someday he'd move back to Billings and be working with Dad. Well, I didn't know what to do for a degree. I mean, baseball was going to be my degree. That's what I was really into. And I was like, well, I need something to fall back on in case baseball doesn't work out. I mean, there's a good chance it won't, right? Very few guys get to the big league, so I better plan on something.
Right.
So I thought, well, I might as well go into the oil business kind of trade. My brother did geophysics. I think that's what I'll do. So I just chose it without much more thought than that. Didn't even know what I was getting myself into. And it wasn't very easy. It wasn't very easy. I remember regional my senior year, I was having to do my senior geophysics paper, and I'm like having to pitch the biggest game of my Stanford career the next day to go to the College World Series. I'm at the USGS in Palo Alto researching until whatever time of night trying to get this paper done.
I was going to ask you that, because you don't put together that type of degree with a D1 player and doing it successly. So it's pretty interesting to ask you that question.
It's something I'm proud of. I'm certainly proud of it, and I guess I challenged myself. It wasn't easy. The class load was significant for sure.
Sure. Okay, last round of questions. Binge Burner. Going to give you names of a few players, Jeff, and then maybe you could just give me a 3x5 index card of your initial thoughts on them. Right?
Yeah. Hopefully I know them, because I don't follow.
No, these are all guys from your playing days.
Cool.
All teammates. We have to start with Cal Ripken Jr.
The best teammate. The thing people don't know about Cal is how much he loved to play, just play, be a kid. And I've told the story 100 times. with his streak, and I was there for a lot of it, he never lived in a glass house. He never protected the streak. And that makes the streak that much more phenomenal. It was never about protecting the streak. Cal would go have fun. He would play hard. He during BP, he's trying to rob home runs. I mean, just have fun, right? And that's what I loved about Cal. He was very serious, but man, he showed up at the ballpark every day, and you knew what you were going to get.
It's interesting. You just started off the conversation about Lou Gehrig, and now we're talking about Cal Ripken.
Yeah,
Two iron horses.
Yeah, really cool.
How about Ben McDonald?
Oh, Ben, Southern boy, man. I love Ben. I roomed with him in spring training one year, his first year for spring training. A fun guy, definitely different than me, kind of grew up in the bayou, certainly had no fear of alligators. The thing I always remember about Ben is when he brought an alligator, baby alligator he caught at our spring training complex into the shower.
Nice.
Freaked out a bunch of guys. Loved Ben. He was great. Yeah.
One of the best color guys out there he's great to listen to on the Oriole games. Now, here's a guy that I don't care what anybody says, and you can leave comments, whatever. He's an Oriole, and that's Mike Messina.
Oh, yeah, Mike. Well, I got to know Mike. I knew he got drafted by the Orioles, but I got to know Mike when he was at Stanford because I was going back to Stanford every year to work out in January and February to get ready for spring training during the years he pitched there. And so love following his Stanford career, obviously a huge career, winning a World Series there in 88 as a freshman with he and Stan Spencer, a great pair. But then he gets drafted by the Orioles and, we already had a good friendship. I used to hang with Mike a little bit. And then he actually moved into my house. I got sent down when Mike Messina got brought up.
Really?
I would call that a huge upgrade for the Orioles. I would have liked to have been there, but I said, "Hey, Mike, well, I'm going back to Rochester. Why don't you just stay in my condo?" So he ended up living in my townhouse, so he had a place to live. So it worked out really well. Yeah, Mike's actually an investor in our company. So
oh, really? Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah, I used to read that he used to read the Wall Street Journal in the locker room. Different type of guy.
I don't doubt it. I mean, Mike's a highly intelligent guy for sure.
Yeah. Here's a guy that you probably loved having as your backdrop as a closer, and that's Greg Olson.
Oh my gosh.
12-6.
Yes, 12-6, man. Nastiest curveball that I'd ever seen when he pitched, and it was fun, and it was really nice as the 89 went on to know that if I pitched 8 and got it to Greg's hands, there's a really good chance for a win.
Yeah.
He was great and a really good guy. We were good friends, and I loved hanging around him. I've even talked to him a couple times since, have his number, and every now and then, when he's doing commentary stuff, he does some stuff too. It's always been fun. Yeah.
All right, 2 more guys. We'll talk Pirates here. Andy Van Slyke.
Andy's a goofball, fun teammate. Loved playing with him. Really, really good player. Really liked watching him play. And he hits left, but he golfs right. Huh. And one time we were golfing, he wanted to borrow my driver to hit it, and I golfed left, and he broke the head off it. That's one thing I remember about Andy.
Did he ever replace it? Did he replace it?
Yeah.
Good. All right, last one, and I think you coincided with maybe his last season, your last season in the majors, and that's Lance Parrish.
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot of interaction with Lance. I don't have much to say about him. Matter of fact, my memory of catching in Pittsburgh would have been Donnie Slott.
Slott, okay.
Yeah, and he was the guy that I remember catching. And he and I had a good relationship. Don was a great reader. He loved reading books, and so I started getting into he was like, "You got to read this," and I'd read it. And I remember because of him, I was reading like the Jason Bourne books.
Okay.
Back in those days. So, and that was because Donnie had already read them and talked about how good they were. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Jeff, this has been fantastic. I tell you, great baseball discussion today. I really enjoyed it. Great always having either a Baltimore Oriole or Miami Dolphin on my channel. I appreciate you joining. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.